Okay, so it's a huge welcome to the show. Times journalist, TV and radio broadcaster, podcaster, QPR fan, and also Roy of The Rovers fan back in the day. Welcome, Giles Coren.
Hi, I'm a bit of a lapsed Roy of the Rovers fan, but very active QPR. So yeah,
Yeah, well, I guess we all kind of lapsed, semi-lapsed, Roy of The Rovers fans. But it's great. It's great for you to come on the show. Thank you very much for this. We're just going to talk about some of your memories of the comic and other comics. We'll see where the conversation goes. Of course, we'll probably mention um, how you got to be here today, and that's about, I sent you that screenshot of when your letter was published on the talking pages back in 1982. So we'll probably cover that as well. Um, but that's it really. How does that sound?
Perfect. Can't wait to talk about it. I think I suspect that since about 1991, I probably never expected to talk about Roy of the Rovers to anyone ever again. I mean, I literally haven't talked about it, or I think about Roy from time to time because I just
Okay.
just his values as a footballer, and I can't help at the time. I always used to think, who is Roy when I was in the 70s. And I remember being convinced he was Tony Curry, who came to Cuba Base, who
It was
was
at QPR, wasn't it?
creative,
Yeah. Yeah.
creative attacking midfielder, had the long blonde hair. That's what was he. Stan Bowles? Stan was who was my hero. Stan was a bit dark for Roy. I don't think Roy drank quite as much. Or was he
Or
Rodney
probably
Marsh?
betted as much.
I bet Rodney Marsh was in the back of their minds. So and through the years, when someone knew who, I remember thinking Paul Walsh was a little bit Roy-like.
Yeah.
And then even now, if anyone with sort of blonde flowing mane and two great feet appears, I wonder, oh, is that Roy of the Rovers?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of any modern day player who's got long blonde flowing locks. There's not really many around at the moment, is there? But it's
Well,
yeah, you say
it's Inga Haaland, isn't it? But I mean, when he tied it all up in a man. But I
yeah.
mean, he's just
I would say Roy in a knot. Can you? It's
no.
that's not his style.
So
But
and Roy's not that big, and let's face it, not that ugly.
no, it's true. Yeah, yeah. He's not. Yeah. Let's not go there with poor old Haaland. But yeah, he probably wasn't as good as Roy in the looks department. But yeah, those 70s players you mentioned there. It's obviously it was 70s when he was probably at his biggest height. Um, so you would automatically think of those types of players back then.
Oh yeah, no, I
Curry
mean,
was a class player. Yeah.
Curry was visibly. I think if you leave out the haircut and everything, you'd say Frank Worthington. For me, it was the kind of guy who did tricks for their own sake, in a fun way, but they were somehow not arrogant. They're not stepovers and all the kind of the Cruyff turns and anything, but the juggling and
No
that sort of
showing off. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
Good
lovely to
stuff.
talk about Roy.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, so what's your kind of earliest memories? Can you remember how you started reading the comic?
Well, I read a lot of comics. And we got three newspapers delivered every day. And my dad was the editor of Punch, which was a magazine back in the day. So we were totally inky people. We got the Beano. I got the Beano. My sister got the
Okay.
Dandy. And then when passing a newsagent, I'd always pick up Topper, Beezer, Whizzer and Chips, Crazy Comic, all of those. In when I was about 8 or 9, I got into American comics, which I remained
Oh,
into.
okay.
So I was a DC fan, basically more of the Green Lantern,
Yeah.
and then the Flash. And I, to this day, have a Silver Age Flash comics collection and Golden Age Flash comics, worth a few quid. And a bit, as famously English comics are not.
Yes,
Uh,
absolutely. As I know, to my detriment, having a huge Weather Rovers collection and it being worth jack. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah.
no. Well, that's the thing. No one else. And so the American comics, I can sometimes go online and look at them. I even buy the odd one, things that used to be so hard to collect comics because you had to find them in the shops or go to the comic marts. Now you just Google it and there it is. And now
Yeah.
at my age, when I was sort of 14 and collecting them, and they go, oh, what, £9 for a comic? I used to think, or then it would be like £100 for or £1,000 only for Action Comics 1, the Superman,
Yeah.
which is obviously
Yes.
worth 2 million. So, but now, yeah, anyway, so I was very into comics, and also I was very into football, and I played football. And as you
Right.
probably know, the crossover of comics nerd football boy was not huge. And Roy was there for us, and I had specky mates who I'd swapped Star Wars cards with and been at the football. And then I was in the first 11, and I was a centre forward, and I wasn't great, but I was an all right player. First 11 at prep school, and I
Yeah,
was an all
yeah.
right player. And so football comics were right in my slot, and they were in a bit of a 70s. You must talk about this all the time. You had in the 50s, you had Victor and Hotspur and all those kinds of ones, and that long distance runner, Alf, somebody I
Alf
remember.
Tupper. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Alf
yeah.
Tupper. I've actually got a poster of his on a wall. And so there was that sort of thing. And I wasn't into the war. I wasn't into battle or
Hmm.
Sergeant Rock was the. I wasn't interested in those ones. But I
Okay.
would read anything in panels. And I didn't read a book long form till I was about 12, 13, 14. I think my dad was a bit worried about me. Are you ever going to read a book? Later, he said, "Oh no, I was just glad that you read anything." And
Yes.
I put my children onto comics because I personally think that when kids are 8, 9, 10, 11, comics and graphic novels can develop more interesting ideas, really, for kids of that age. Once you can read fluently, you still want pictures because you're still a kid. And I think they do a really good job. So, Roy, I reckon I probably started about 1979 when I was 10.
Right.
But the key
Go on.
thing is what happened was like not long after starting to read them, I had maybe 10 copies. The school had a jumble sale, and a boy called Alexei Vasilikis, a name I haven't thought of for 40 years, he was a couple of years above me. He was throwing out his old Roy of the Rovers, and he threw out
Ah.
probably 4 years of Roy of the Rovers. From when did it start, Roy? Was it
Well, the self-titled comic was 76.
76? So there you
Yeah.
go. It was basically all of them going back to, and obviously Roy was in Tiger, wasn't he, before that?
Yes. Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
he had missing ones. But I then had a sudden stack of like 150 of them, and I read them and read them. Then I got them, and then I read them right through. That letter that I had published, I was surprised when you sent it to me to discover it was as late as it was, because it was 81 or 82. I was 13. I mean, what was I doing? I felt like I'd been 9 or something.
Look, I was reading it when I was 13, so it's fine. It's
Oh,
okay.
it is fine.
You
I
can fess
just
up to it.
wait reading it, but writing, dear Roy,
Writing
how
in.
many crowds have
Yeah.
you played in? I don't know. It was, but then interestingly, I then asked you, who did I ask you about? About Dexter.
Colin, Johnny Dexter. Yeah,
Johnny
yeah.
Dexter, the hard man who went to Melchester. And you said, yeah, that was in 86. And I was like, well, fuck off, not 1986. I
So
was
you were
17.
reading it in 86 still,
I was
then, were you?
already, oh, clearly 86, 87. Not a shame. I mean, I went to university in 88, and I definitely got back into the Flash then, the DC comic, and I
Right.
started buying
Okay.
those. I didn't remember I was still reading Roy of the Rovers, but I swear to God, I would be reading it now. Although we'll come on to that maybe, but my son,
Yeah.
but I saw the reboot,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I'm not crazy about the graphic style of it, but I bought them for my boy. They're quite confusing numbering systems, and there were different versions
Yeah,
of.
because there's a novel, and then there's a graphic novel, then there's a novel and a graphic novel. Yeah, I know, I know. We'll cover that later, but yeah, no. And also, it's interesting you say about when you wrote in '82, because I understand you said that you'd wrote in previously as well. You tried previously to get onto the talking
Yeah.
page, or yeah, but you
And
hadn't.
I had tried to get into the Beano as well. And I used to write off to the American comics, not realizing that it would never get to America, just because they look for interaction. In the days before internet, there was a thing where there were in American comics. If you had a Superman comic, there were always these ads for miraculous things, X-ray specs and stuff.
Yes, I remember
And
those.
you'd
Yeah,
send off, and they'd want 99 cents, and how would I get it? And they wanted to know your zip code, and you couldn't. But
no,
the English ones you could write off. I think I must have joined the Dennis the Menace fan club, which was a
yeah,
crap deal.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
whatever it was, they
yeah.
sent you some little passport.
You
And
did,
oh
yeah.
boy, I wanted to get onto the letters page. I used to write him interesting questions, and then I eventually realised that it was about the answer he wanted to give, or whoever was pretending to be
I was going to
Roy.
say it's interesting when you say him and the answer
I
he
think
wanted. I know that's the beauty of it because we believed it. There was a Roy there, didn't we?
you're not going to
Or
tell me there isn't.
subconsciously.
You're not. You're going to start saying there isn't a Father
Uh,
Christmas.
we'll talk about that later.
I knew that they wanted to print an interesting answer.
Yeah.
And I knew that QPR, my team, who have all sorts of interesting things about them, none of which involve trophies, apart from the 67 League Cup when we were in Division 3 and blah, 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 and that which was
Rodney
great
Marsh.
before my time, exactly. But we played on more grounds than anyone else. We played it from the old Queen's Park, we played at White City, and we'd had 13 home grounds or something. So
Right.
I wrote, dear Roy, how many grounds? Who's played at the most grounds or something like that? Or, how many grounds have QPR played on in their career? And he wrote back and said, interesting question, Giles, and my name was in print for the first time.
Incredible. fantastic, fantastic. And so it was great to be able to kind of send that to you just before Christmas. And thank you for mentioning the podcast in the article you wrote. That was really,
I was delighted. It
really
was,
great of you.
I was very grateful. I was just, I've got it here. My Roy is
Ah, great.
pride of thing
Excellent.
in
Yeah,
my drawer.
for listeners, Giles is showing it on the screen.
Oh yeah,
The copy I sent over. Yeah, with Suzanne Dando on the cover. And that's
Suzanne
actually,
Dando looking pretty tidy, I have to say. I mean, jumping out of a sack. It's the Christmas
I
present.
mean, there's so many different. Yeah, exactly. I know.
There's
But
a
I mean,
photo
interesting.
Rona.
That's actually Barry Tomlinson is the guy there who's just behind Suzanne,
Oh really?
who was the group editor. Yeah, and it's just superimposed Roy's face on it, but it's actually Barry Tomlinson who's the group editor. We've actually interviewed a couple of times, and the artist who drew Roy at the time, David Skew, he's the guy who did him that picture there. So it's yeah, I hesitate to say it's an iconic cover. I don't know if
Yeah.
there's such a thing for Roy of the Rovers, but I think it certainly is, and it's even more iconic now because it's got your letter in it. So there you go,
Yeah.
So going back to the stories, what kind of, and I know we've exchanged a couple of messages. What stories do you remember? Obviously the Roy story. What others do you remember?
I remember. So I remember Mighty Mouse, but I think maybe he was Tiger. Or was he Roy of the Rovers?
No, he was Roy of the Rovers.
He
Yeah,
was Roy, but Hotshot Hamish, who was drawn by the same artist, I believe.
yes, yeah,
Hotshot Hamish was in Tiger and then joined Mighty Mouse when Tiger folded.
Good knowledge. Yes,
I think that's what
absolutely.
happened. And he was the one who could blast the nets. And Mighty Mouse, I don't remember. He was a tubby little fella. I liked him. I was quite short and fat, and that's why I didn't last that long in the first 11 at school. I remember, I just remember images. So I remember the footballer who wouldn't stay dead. I mean, that was a
Yes,
great story. And what I loved about that was about a footballer from the 1930s who would come back and I can't remember our protagonist, but would give him
it
tips
was.
and football. And then he had a
Yeah,
cover, which I've not seen in 40 years, 50 years, whatever, where the footballer who wouldn't stay dead is about to sort of deliver a pile driver shot, and our boy is kind of covering his face. Oh my God, he's going to kick with this shot, but it's a feint. It was like this guy's giving him this tip that you do a fake shot,
yes,
then make the
yes,
man back off, and then you dribble around him. And it was this thing that the idea that you play football and you wouldn't know that most basic of feints, and also there was
yes.
this huge fear that the 10-year-old boy was going to be seriously hurt by this ball. No, but that was great. And if you think about it now, that footballer from the 1930s, if Roy of the Rovers existed now, he'd be someone who played in the 70s, wouldn't he? I mean, that's
Yeah,
how
yeah,
long.
yeah.
30s to that was as long ago. So I remember that very well.
Yeah.
I remember Billy's boots. I mean, but
Yes.
not much about them. The jeopardy there was, oops, he's forgotten his boots. You've got a footballer,
Every week.
you
Yeah.
that's a footballer. He's to listeners, your fans all know who he was. But it's a bit like Superman. Great idea, but after a while you realize unless there's kryptonite, there's no story. Unless he loses his power. I love the Flash, the DC character, the fastest man alive. You can only have a plot if he loses his speed. Otherwise, he's just too fast. And Billy was the same. He often playing the football. It's the big cup game tomorrow, and Billy's mum will go, "Don't forget your boots, Billy," and then he'd forget his boots
And yeah.
and be rubbish.
And do you remember when in the summer as well, because he actually found a pair of boots, cricket boots. Do you remember that? He actually, I think it went out later on. I think it was in time
That does
because
ring a bell.
yeah, so he started doing that as well. So it wasn't just the football. It was like during the summer months as well. He did have the same jeopardy. It was just and I think the story in the end, it was written by a guy called Fred Baker, and he wrote it for about 20 years. So you think 20 years of mileage out of that story, it's just incredible. But then obviously readers would be only typically there for about maybe 3 or 4 years, perhaps the average reader. So you could just keep recycling this.
But also the artwork was beautiful. The drawings were beautiful. The lines were amazing. And as a kid, you just want to see football happen. I wanted a bicycle kick. Roy couldn't do one every week. I wanted you. You're obsessed with a bicy when you're that age.
Oh
My
yeah.
son is now. It was so rare. There's that one particular move. Frank Worthington, who was one of the candidates for played a bit like Roy. There's that famous one
The
when he
famous one,
ball with his back to goal,
when
jiggles
he's playing
it
for
twice.
Bolton, wasn't he?
Yeah, over his shoulder, turns around, scores. Trying that in the garden for years, and it was the sort of thing that Roy would sometimes do. Other ones that one of them that sticks with me is Space Invader, which was I don't know you're gonna that was
you remember that one?
that
I'm
was
surprised.
Did
Yeah.
you remember Space Invader?
Well, it's a weird one because it was only actually there. Because I covered the 1982 Christmas edition on a show just before Christmas, funny enough. And Space Invader was in that one. It's in that one.
Well, I
But I
just
think it was
remember him
only actually,
arriving.
it was about 6 months. I think the story only lasted in the comic for about
I
6 months.
I just remember him arriving, and it was, I imagine, the first black character that had been in
It
Roy of
was
The Rovers.
first main
and
black character, yeah.
and he played Space Invaders, but he was also a space invader. And his great thing in football was he could always find space. He could always be
It's
in space.
genius.
And he played these video games, and I think maybe his mum didn't want him to. And he was a very kind of 70s Jackson's sort of
Yeah, yeah.
white
The
man's
Jacksons, the
idea of a
TV
black
series.
footballer. So
Yeah,
he
yeah,
had
yeah,
big
yeah,
hair and
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
funky clothes and stuff, and was just he was just a cool character. I remember I wasn't crazy about the artwork. It was very bendy.
Yeah, and I find this, I don't know if you find this, but because obviously we've got to know over time, because you didn't know at the time who the artists were or who the actual
Yeah,
authors were. But over time you get to know who they are, and you realise that a lot of stories you liked were because they had similar artists, or it's the same
yeah,
artist that went on to them. So like The Footballer Wouldn't Stay Dead was Tony Harding, and when you look at the other stuff that he did, you can say, oh yeah, I like that story, and I like that story, and it's because of, say, you believed in the art. A bit like, say, Mighty Mouse and Hotshot Hamish,
oh yeah.
Schiaffino.
I mean,
It's the same. Yeah.
I don't think they used to sign them then, did they, or did they?
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. It was
That was the
very
thing.
secretive.
It
Yeah.
was that was the thing. It was because it was always, comics was always a tiny bit more shameful or babyish than in America, where they were always signed. And for me,
Yes.
artists like Bob Kane was famous, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, but also Carmine Infantino was an artist on The Flash that I like. I even knew people like Dick Giordano was an inker, whereas other ones were the and they didn't have that. My children are aware now, so they read the Beano and they have a love-hate relationship with it because it's frankly it's a bit rubbish compared to when we were kids, but it has good things about it. And the
Okay.
Bash Street Kids artist changed.
Yes.
It had been the same guy forever,
Right.
and then it changed, and they noticed, and I think they wrote him complaining to the Beano or something. He said, "Can't do much. He's dead." I think was the
You can't do much about that. No, exactly.
But you're right. There were those loyalties. I remember a strip about that. It was about a non-league club that came up.
Yes.
Was it called? And it had a name. The manager. It was like Dan's Invincibles or something. No.
There was Durrell's Palace was the
Yes.
first
Well, whose
story.
palace was it?
Durrell's,
Daryl's Palace. And
Durrells,
they had a
and
sort of crappy
they're
ground and no
non-league.
sand, and yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. He turned up. They were a non-league club, and I think the story went for about 4 years, 4 or 5 years, and then he took over a league club, and it's called Wayne's Wolves after that. So Dan Wayne was the name of the guy. He was the
Right.
manager. But yeah, that was also drawn by I think that's drawn by no, that's drawn by Yvonne Hutton, she used to be the artist on Roy pre-76. So she was in the Tiger days. Her style was
Yeah.
very similar to David Skew, who took over in 76, 75.
Interesting. Talking about art, my kid Sam, who's 10 and a goalkeeper and very good. Oh, the safest hands in soccer. What was he called? Gordon
Yeah,
Stewart? Was he called
Gordon
Gordon Stewart?
Stewart. Yeah, yeah, good memory.
And then
Yeah,
he
yeah, yeah.
died, and he died in a plane crash, and then his son became a keeper.
Yeah, so I think the first story lasted, I think, 72 to about 82, 79, sorry, to 82. Then it stopped because, I don't know if you remember, but you could vote for your favorite story. So you can put marks out of 10, and then, they
Right.
encourage you to write in, and so you can actually rate them. So, they get getting customer feedback. But the score dipped for safest hands in soccer. They got rid of the story. They brought in a new story called The Wheelchair Wonder. But then there was a bit of an uproar, and in the end, they brought a new story back in called Goalkeeper.
Yes,
When
goalkeeper.
Goalkeeper started in '83,
And that was his son.
but in the first kind of episode of that episode, yeah, Gordon Stewart gets on a plane crash. No,
Yeah.
no more Gordon Stewart, and then you introduce to Rick Stewart, his son, and that carried on for years.
You see, the
Carried on
things
for
that
years.
the things that you remember are so strange because the thing I remember, partly he would do these impossible saves and catch it
It's
in his glove.
incredible, and the artwork was Osvaldo
Yeah.
Torta. He was a South American, as you can tell from the name. Superb art. That's what drew me into that.
He has it. There's a moment when he has an injury, and I think it's Gordon rather than Rick, and he's coming back from injury, and he's practicing his goal kick, and he says, and he's practicing his goal kick just from the placed kick, and he says, feeling better now, clearing the halfway line with both feet. And I just remember, and I couldn't at that stage, and probably now again can't, and probably never could clear the halfway line from there. And it
No
was he
way.
could do it. And I've looked for a keeper, and I've wondered every keeper I see, could you clear the halfway line with both feet? Obviously, now you're required only to tap it to your centre half because
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
back. So it's not a
Hopefully.
skill they need to have anymore.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Um,
God, blimey. Yeah, that would be unusual for back in the 80s to actually expect that skill of your goalkeeper. That's
no, I just that always stayed with me. And then so my son, who's a keeper now, and he loves football. So I got these new Roy ones, and he quite liked them. But then I bought him for Christmas last year. I found there's annuals you can get of the 80s and the
yeah,
70s.
yeah, yeah,
And he
yeah.
and he just preferred them so much. He just
Really?
because the heart and the love in the drawing. I think the new iteration is a computer graphic. It's all right. It's all angular with sort of silly haircuts
Yeah.
and
It's kind of mangerish, and it's yeah.
yeah,
I mean, the new one kind of started in 2018. They actually went back to the old artist. So David Skew, they actually brought him back for the last two graphic novels.
right.
So if you pick those up, it's got the original Roy artists there. They're a lot better. But yeah, I mean, I think the last one was released almost 2 years ago now. So I think, without speaking to the publisher, I think kind of sales just clearly aren't there. So the
Yeah, yeah.
market. But I mean, you said your son, he kind of enjoyed them, or he kind
Oh
of
yeah.
would if more were out, he'd read them.
Yeah, but I mean he reads Wimpy Kid and Dogman
Yeah,
and Cat Kid, and he also will read any kind. He reads books too, but he will read any kind of
yeah.
novel, any comic. And he's a footballer, although he's mainly a cricketer, and cricket comics really don't fly. And I'm sure of never.
I think no, I can't
That
remember any of those.
you're getting into a niche there, which
The
wouldn't have.
really
But
niche.
no, he did. He liked them. He did. He liked the modern ones, but he liked the old stuff. He's a very much a dad's boy, and we do a lot together. And we go to football together. We go to cricket together.
Mm.
And if I like something, he likes something. So that's why the poor bastard supports QPR. I tried to give him Arsenal. I mean, when he was born, I took him. We lived just up the road from the Emirates, and I took him to Arsenal a few times, just thinking, why should I? QPR, but I didn't get it from my dad. QPR was just me. Why should I give him this horror this boredom, this not boredom. I love QPR more than anything, but you don't win anything. Your
Yeah,
best thing,
yeah,
maybe maybe you're gonna are you gonna stay up in the championship? No glory. Very few. Anything like a great player now is someone who played with us for a season and then went on. Eze at the moment is a player who Sam thinks of as always a QPR player because we saw him live and now he's gone on to something. And also,
oh yeah,
Sam's I've seen everyone. I've seen Liverpool, Man United, Arsenal, Chelsea, all both at Loftus Road and travelled away to them. With Sam, we go to Peterborough, we go to Swansea. It's crap. And then we sit there and he's quite worried. Tonight we've got mighty Stoke. They're quite
yes, I know
big
you have.
for what
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
seen. We went to. I took him to his about the second game. I took him to a cup game, fourth round, because we never get past the fourth round against Watford, and that was the first Premier League team, as was 2 years ago, that he'd seen. This year we had who are they? Bournemouth. We had Bournemouth in the cup, and Bournemouth, they're in the Premier League. I thought, my God, I watched Cantona score in the 97th minute against us. I watched Giggs and Kanchelskis. I watched John Barnes. I watched Kevin Keegan at QPR, and he has to watch this filth. So I took him to Arsenal, but it was in the Unai Emery period when they were awful.
Okay.
It's no atmosphere at all
No, no, no.
up there. He liked Aubameyang, he liked Lacazette, but mostly he quite liked Granit Xhaka because he was such a hooligan. But otherwise, it was terrible. And then so we went to, and then I took him to a QPR game. Funnily enough, it was Stoke at home, and we were 2-0 down. Eze was playing, and we were 2-0 down, and we came back 2-0 at halftime, 4-2 we won. And I went
Wow.
absolutely mental. I mean, and he sees how much his dad loves
Yeah,
QPR.
yeah,
He
yeah, yeah.
sees a win like that and the noise in that stadium with the corrugated iron. And so he's QPR. But it's the same way Roy of the Rovers, or Dad likes Roy of the Rovers. I like Roy of the Rovers.
Right. Okay. Okay. But it's interesting you say about QPR, and I do get that. Is why did you stay with these clubs which probably aren't as successful as the big clubs? But it's all about that. It is about perhaps going with your dad, or it's just the fact that it's more enclosed atmosphere. It's more personal. They're closer to you than these massive, great big clubs. So it's great that he is. Not all kids would. Some would just go, well, I still want to support Arsenal, but it's great that
No,
he is.
I was he was at just a school here in northwest London where they were starting to support obviously Chelsea, which is hideous
Yeah.
to me. But at least it's a London team, and I used to go to Chelsea when I was a football crazy and QPR were away. I would sometimes go to Chelsea with a Chelsea mate.
Mm.
And I've always liked Arsenal. If you think of if you were the same sort of the same age, there was a period when I was in my 20s and 30s. They were a wonderful team, and the
Mm.
Wenger side and Bergkamp and
Oh,
Overmars
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and all that Vieira, that was a wonderful thing. And so I had this affection, and they were around the corner. I don't hate Arsenal. It was rare for QPR to play them because of the divisions. I went to Highbury when we beat them 3-1. John Jensen, they'd been waiting 2 years for him to score his
Oh,
first
yeah,
goal.
he never scored, did he? Yeah,
He,
yeah, I
he
don't know.
finally scored after 3 years against QPR. And then we scored three. And there were T-shirts. I was there when Jensen scored, and Gallen and Allen and Impey. And so I never hated them. And I just thought I'll take him because going through life, he's going to be able to watch his team on the telly. He'll be able to go to Europe, which I've never done, and otherwise he's going to end up supporting either Chelsea or Man City, God forbid, or Man United, or one of those which they support. And his best mate's a Liverpool fan, and his dad's a Liverpool fan, and he's not from Liverpool, but that's fine. He's Irish. I think that makes it okay.
Yeah, yeah,
But they spend more on their one day at Anfield every year than we spend on a season ticket for the pair of us. My
yeah,
season ticket for Rangers is the pair of us is under £1,000. I think my season ticket's 700 quid. Sam's is about
yeah.
200 quid.
And that's the
We
thing.
don't go that much, but I feel I support the club with the money. I have the seat I like, Block S, Row S, seat 61 and 62, where I've always sat right by the exit, get out for a wee, finish your pint and get in. You can be late for the
It's not
game.
easy at that ground either. I've been there. Yeah,
Oh God, no. That's the thing. They take it's only 15,000, but they cram them into a space
yeah,
the size of a primary school. There
yeah,
and
yeah,
everyone.
yeah. I don't
There's
know how
no.
it passes health and safety, but that's by the
I
by.
have no idea. I'm sure it doesn't, but it is provides something for
You can go regularly without even thinking about it, can't you? You can just say, right, every other weekend, Sam, we're going to the football. That's what I think it's to me anyway. It's
oh,
more grassroots. It's not grassroots. I know we're not talking non-league, but it
it's
is. It's more
it's win, lose or draw. It's
achievable.
still the thing. You support them. You see kids. You see these fans of the big clubs crying when his mates tell no, they Arsenal lost, crying. And Sam, do you know? I'll tell you what. We're season ticket holders. Sam plays a lot of cricket at weekends and often can't make it. But Sam hasn't seen QPR win since we beat Cardiff and went top in December 22. We have in that time since then won 10 games in nearly 2 years. I mean, did you know Queen's Park Rangers have lost more football matches than any other league team in the last 5 years and the last 10 years?
I didn't.
Only
I didn't. I do
the
now.
closest to us is Crawley Town. Right? I think Birmingham are teams you've heard of, but we've the lot we lose and lose and lose. I've seen us win a handful of times. He has not seen, and we show up and we went two up, I think, against Bournemouth and then lost. You know, um, it's
It's great, but he still managed to beat Millwall on the
yes.
20th of January 2-0. So thanks for that anyway. I hope that kind of cheered up yourself and Sam
Oh,
anyway.
it's amazing. I remember when we beat Millwall in the fourth round of the cup, 1992 or three. It was 0-0 to the 94th minute, and I was a bit scared. Oh, it's Millwall. What are they going to do? And it was up the far end. We got a penalty, and Clive Wilson, our best left back, never to play for England, our captain, and one of the then reasonably few black players in the league. We always had three or four, but and black man went up to take a pen in front of the Millwall in the 93rd minute and buried it.
I
Against
know.
Millwall, they flattened Shepherd's Bush. There were no pubs left. There were no bus stops. I mean, it was the perfect storm of Queen's Park Rangers, a black player, 97th minute, the cup. Yeah, it was, and then we went to Plough Lane and got beaten, I think, after that.
Yeah, I think I do vaguely. I think I watched it on the big screen back at the Den. But yeah, I think it was like it's handball in the last minute, wasn't it? Yeah, yeah. I wasn't in Shepherd's Bush at the time, so I just want to put it on record. I wasn't there.
Those were different
Can't
days.
prove nothing. Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
my mate and colleague Rod Little is a big Millwall fan.
Ah, yeah,
Uh,
he is, isn't he? Yeah, yeah,
and
he
we,
is.
we
Yeah,
have
yeah.
endless
Read his
we have
columns. Yeah.
endless barneys about that. But no, I know Millwall have a reputation, but it's Chelsea the ones we hate, not Millwall.
Right. Okay. Yeah. There's not much rivalry between ourselves and QPR. So just kind of, I don't want to keep you too long because I know you know
Right.
appreciate your time. But what about storylines? Thinking about kind of key storylines. Thinking about the Roy. I mean, there's the famous, infamous when he was shot. Were there any
Yeah.
others that kind of jumped out at you from those days?
I'm trying to remember didn't Blackie have some mental health problems or something? Didn't Blackie not? Did he? Or did he fall
He,
out? Maybe not.
he did
I
late. Well, I think he did later, but this would have been much past your reading time. I
really.
think this would have been the 90s. It wouldn't have gone to like a monthly and stuff like that.
Gosh, I
Yeah.
remember the. Do I remember any? I don't really remember.
Do you remember when he transferred to Walford? He left Milchester.
Late. Was that
It was
later?
about 83. It was about 83.
83,
It
yeah,
was. He
late.
moved, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And well, he was shot in 81.
Oh, I
They
remember him
got
playing for England,
yes. Do you
and
remember
I
that
remember him playing with Malcolm
1978?
McDonald.
Yes. Yeah,
Did
yeah,
he play
yeah.
in? Did Roy play in the Cyprus game, which was a real? I mean, didn't play, was it?
What you mean? What? No, that when Malcolm scored, he scored five goals, didn't he? No,
Yeah,
it's
am I just conflating the two? Have I got Malcolm McDonald's 5 goals in the
I
Cyprus
don't
game?
think Roy Race actually really played for England in 1975 against Cyprus.
No,
Not
but
quite sure. But he
maybe
might have
that
done.
was the game they put in the comic. No, I'm.
He could, no, he took over as player manager. So the story was, I think that the England manager, he didn't mention who he was, but he was in a car accident. He took over as player manager, and he said, "I'm only going to do it on my terms." I think he picked 7 of Melchester players in the team. Like Vernon Elliott was in there, Jeff Giles, himself, but Malcolm McDonald was in there and Trevor Francis. And they brought Nipper in. That's it. They brought Nipper in from Nipper was in Tiger at the time. So yeah,
Yes,
they played Holland and they beat them 5-1.
I remember Trevor Francis. Yes, yes, yes. Because he was a bit of an obsession. Although had he yet, if it was 78, he hadn't yet been sold for 1 million because that was 79, wasn't it? Um,
No, but he was a big star, and I think he actually wrote for Tiger for years. So he must have had a really close relationship with Barry Tomlinson, saying the editor. But yeah, he didn't move to Forest until 79, wasn't he? So he must have still been at Birmingham then.
but his
So,
career only really got off the ground when he came to QPR, obviously.
well, yeah, and obviously and as a manager as well, he did a great job there as well, didn't he? As
Yeah, he was yes in the various Francis, but he would do better than anyone's done for a while now, though.
No, I know. So finally, then I suppose Giles, the kind of what your thoughts for QPR this season? What are you kind of say? You mentioned already you've got this game against Stoke away tonight.
Stoke
Do
away
you think you're
tonight.
going to stay up? What's
I I
what's the gut
I
feel?
I honestly don't. I think we would need a Roy of the Rovers plot line, probably. Because I've seen us recently play well and just not we play. I mean, we didn't play well against Huddersfield. We did. Okay, so I didn't see the Millwall game, and apparently we were really good against Millwall.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, you did. Yeah, yeah.
I
After the
mean,
first half hour. Well, sorry,
yeah,
actually, I think we dominated for 5 minutes, and then after that, it was you.
that's a very QPR sort of a thing to say. We dominated for 5 minutes. I mean, I think I've seen us play very well and get nowhere. Our problem is you have to, we get 45 minutes at 0-0 and everyone has to look away because that's when we lose concentration in the 4 minutes
Yeah,
before
yeah.
halftime. I've seen all the teams. This terrible thing. Begovic is a good keeper, but we've had this problem that the teams have been pressing quite high and pressing higher and higher, which isn't a very championship thing against QPR because we've got these. Our defenders are not ball players, but
No,
Martin
they're big
play
lumps,
it
aren't
out from
they?
the back. It's giving the ball away, and I see it because my son's a keeper at under 11 level, where the
Yeah.
defenders are just the 2 crappiest players, the two. So, and you have to play it out from the back, and they lose the ball and score. But we don't press and we don't rush them. So we always give whoever's visiting, they have time to play the ball out from the back, and we just sit on the halfway line scratching our bums like the 80s. And they give us no time, and we get rushed. So I've seen us play well and come away with nothing. And there was a point which after Cifuentes came and things improved. I gather our recent signings though, because I didn't go Saturday either, but our new signings have
Okay.
bedded in quite well. Frey is one of them. I don't. When we buy players, they come from such crappy nether regions of the football world. That obviously, if you're a real observer, you've heard of them, but they're people they're coming from the Portuguese third division and stuff. And
Yeah.
you just don't really know. So,
It sounds like our
league,
recruitment policy. Yeah.
exactly. They've got a league system in the Faroe Islands. I didn't know that,
Yeah.
but I'm glad he's in the top flight. So I sort of think we won't. I hear Sam saying something that I used to say when we were rubbish in the old second division. Well, if we go down, the good thing about going down, Dad, to the whatever it's called, the next year, we'll win some games. They go, yeah, you
Oh,
hope, mate, because we might not. We might not.
Well, this is a conversation that's going on in WhatsApp groups of Millwall fans as well. Is that there's lots of clubs that have gone down and they don't get back up. Charlton, Derby, Portsmouth. It's not
Yeah.
easy. So
It's
yeah.
it's where's it going to come from? I'm interested. I don't think Millwall are in danger. Well, not as much
Well, we're
danger.
4 points. We're only 4 points above you as we speak currently.
Well,
It
if
could all
we
change tonight.
if if we are you playing tonight?
Yeah. We're home to Ipswich, who
Oh,
are on a bit of a dodgy run, but
they are.
a
That's the
good
time
team.
to get them. That's the time to get them. It's an interesting thing. Whenever last season, when Sam and I, last season was a heroic thing for Sam. They did the triple. Peterborough did the triple on us, and I saw all three games. And went down. They did the triple on us and went down. Was that last season or the season before? But anyway, it's anyone. The thing that QPR have to fear is anyone who hasn't won for a year. Anyone,
Yes.
anyone who hasn't scored at home in 14 years. They end their jinx immediately. I think we turned your season around a little bit last year. I seem to remember, didn't you? Didn't you do us at
Yeah, you were doing really well, weren't you? And then your manager left to go to Rangers,
where he
and then I
fortunately
think
got fired? Which was my second choice after plane crash in outcomes for him.
yeah,
Uh,
he could have been in safest hands in soccer. He would have fitted in quite well, wouldn't he?
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
I've got
no,
a
yeah, we
feeling.
did actually. I think we had because you were flying. I think you were top or something like that, and then I think we
Yeah,
beat you at home. That was
yeah. And
great.
you
And
and
then
you when
then
you
the
hadn't
roles
been going
reversed.
well, and it turned your
Yeah,
your
yeah,
season
yeah,
around.
yeah.
I don't know. Today we beat Stoke. If we beat them by 3, we go ahead of them.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
It's very annoying that we didn't beat Huddersfield and the thing is that Huddersfield game I went with Sam. Sam was saying, "Oh, finally we're going to see a win, Dad. Huddersfield are shit,"
Oh, no.
and Huddersfield and they were rubbish. I mean, they were
Were they?
rubbish,
Okay.
and we couldn't get past them. So we tend to do a little bit better against Norwich. We did slightly better against the better teams. But no, I think realistically, I find it hard we'll go down in third from bottom.
Do you think so? Right,
I,
okay.
I
I
can't.
mean, I'd hate to say I hope so, but it's pretty good to be one of us.
Well, I know
Yeah.
certainly if you're typical of Millwall fans, and I can only speak for Rod Little. Rod disproportionately hates QPR, um,
Really?
because he doesn't think everyone thinks of them as nice. They're nicey nicey.
Yeah, and
Whereas
that's yeah.
the thing where you hate Millwall and you like QPR, and he thinks because it's in posh West London, and it's not posh, and it wasn't.
It's not.
He thinks it's all a
No.
bit posh and like I don't know what.
It's posh compared to Bermondsey, but yeah, Shepherd's Bush
That's
is
it.
not posh. Yeah.
It's not posh, but it's posh compared to Bermondsey. And there is something about with our sort of Nancy blue and white stripes in our and we think that in the 70s we were all that. And so I have this feeling that the it's every Londoner's second team is QPR, but it's never Millwall. So
No, we're quite happy about that. Yeah, we're quite famous for being quite
famously.
happy about it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's our byword. Look, that's been great. Thank you very
Great.
much. It's
Pleasure.
been really good fun. So, listeners, I hope you enjoyed that. But to Giles Coren, I'd just like to say thank you very much. And yeah, cheers.
Good luck tonight is what you want to say. And to you.
Oh, sorry. Good luck tonight.
and
Come
to,
on,
and
you
to,
ours.
and to the Lions as well.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.